Hey guys, welcome back to One Room Schoolhouse series starting back up. And today I am joined by some good friends. On the end, Elijah from American Journey Experience. Elijah, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Is there anything you would like to add about your incredible resume, your brilliance, the reason you're qualified to speak to some of what we're doing?
Well, God does not call the equipped, He equips the called. Part of my story starts in the Texas legislature.
That's great. Thanks, Elijah. Okay, and next, Danielle, also from WallBuilders, will be joining us. Danielle, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I know this for you was a little bit of a like, hey, Danielle, come do this. And you're like, okay.
Yeah,
So
sure.
willing to do it.
Yeah, anything that needs to be done, I'll at least try.
Love it. So we're going to try. We'll see how this goes. If it goes well, then you might see them on tomorrow's Hero of the Day.
You don't see us, send help.
Or just know that we've resolved the problem. Either way, it's going to be fine. So what we are doing in February, we are doing a Hero of the Day segment. And actually, we have a new series at WallBuilders. It's the American Heroes package. And this is something we're going to do for lots of different kind of genres. This one just seemed to make sense as we're in February and we're talking about Black History Month. We know, guys, in the era of the 1619 Project, in the era of critical race theory, there's a lot of mantra and narrative that goes against America and a Marxist ideology where you only have oppressed and oppressors. And
sounds like you're saying we're in an era of racial equality and everything's great. Is that not?
Well, it's not quite what I'm suggesting at the moment.
Okay, I think I missed the point.
We'll work on it, right? But because you have incredible heroes from American history who are Black patriots, Black heroes, yes. Because it doesn't fit the modern narrative of the portrayal that the 1619 Project, critical race theory wants to have of some of these Black heroes, they're overlooked. And so we thought, it's a great opportunity. Let's celebrate. Let's have a Hero of the Day for every single Monday through Friday, Black History Month. So for everybody out there, if you are a homeschool family, if you are a grandparent, if you are in a Christian private public school, wherever you are, there can be a Hero of the Day. In fact, if you're in an office place, you just want to play these, awesome. Hero of the Day. We want to introduce you to a hero that really should be celebrated. Unfortunately, oftentimes their story isn't very well known, although this is something that these are very discoverable people. And so as we introduce you to their story, you totally can go do a deeper dive, find out more about them and why truly they are American heroes. Also worth noting is that we have all 20 of these American heroes that we have their whole story, relatively speaking, a page and a half, so it's super easy to read, that you can get their story. We have some footnotes on there as well to point you to places you can find some of the documentation for what we're explaining about them and why they were a hero, the contributions they made. So you can go to wallbuilders.com to find out more. But guys, as we start, one of my favorite heroes generally from the Revolution, right? Not even like just kind of white people, Black people, like like literally one of my favorite heroes is somebody we've talked about a little bit before, WallBuilders, One Room Schoolhouse, I think we've introduced before, but James Armistead.
Yes. So I think whenever you talk about the contributions that these heroes played in American history, you'll realize that American history can't accurately be told unless you talk about some of these people, and James Armistead is definitely one of the standout characters in that. So yeah, let's definitely get into his story. Yeah,
so arguably, the American Revolution might not have been won, at least not in the way it was. Arguably, the guy who helped bring the victory, the end of the American Revolution, was James Armistead. So Elijah, let's start off. Let's walk through the story a little bit. Let's invite everybody listening. We want to tell you some of the story, and let's unfold this. Why is James Armistead a big deal? We mentioned, right, kind of his contributions on some level, but who was he? What did he do? Let's start a story.
So James Armistead was the slave of William Armistead, who served in the Revolutionary War with George Washington. And he did some work in arms dealing with the Revolutionary Army. But one of the reasons why James Armistead got involved in eventually becoming a spy for the revolutionaries is because he saw the destruction of Richmond.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the destruction of Richmond, right? Because the person who was involved in that was General Benedict Arnold.
Everyone, a household name, right?
Yeah, especially at this point. Well, and right, back to the fall of Richmond, what's worth noting is as Benedict Arnold, who's now the British officer leading the attack against Richmond, he doesn't just conquer Richmond. He literally turns troops loose on the civilian population. Yeah. And this is where James sees it, and James is like, okay, I want to do something. Interestingly enough, one of the guys that Washington had tasked with tracking the movement of the British officers was the Marquis de Lafayette.
Yeah.
And so Lafayette, and really in brilliance, he realizes he needs a spy ring. And for the spy ring, which we've mentioned before on the One Room Schoolhouse, spy rings were not a brand new thought in American history. Even the Revolution, you have like the Culper spy ring. Abigail Adams had like her female spy ring. Super cool. Well, Lafayette realizes probably one of the most effective ways for a spy ring is if we get black patriots to come join the spy ring, because they can go to British camp pretending to be escaped slaves. The British are going to take them in for refuge because the British had already released an order.
But Lafayette also just had such a heart for Black Americans, for Black people in general, for the slavery issue, because we talk about in 1783 he went off the coast of South America to the Cayenne. Is that right? And he actually purchased. He was very wealthy, a very wealthy Frenchman, and he purchased this plantation solely for the heart of freeing the slaves, right? For paying them he abolished the whip. He took care of these people as if they were his family. And George Washington actually wrote him and was like, I love that you did this, which speaks to the heart of both of those men.
Yeah, Lafayette definitely was one of those guys who was an anti-slavery guy, who's pro-equality. And so he also, military strategy, sees this is a very strategic move.
Yes.
Because the British have already passed an order saying, if you are an escaped slave, come to us, we will take care of you, which also there's a little irony that the British said, we'll make sure you get your freedom. And then I think it was like 80,000 slaves that went to the British, and they freed like less than 5,000 of them over time. It's like, interesting that tyrants tend to lie along the way, right? Side note, for those curious about government authority positions, sometimes they lie. No. Nonetheless, James Armistead joins the military, and Lafayette recruits him and says, I want you to come spy for me. And as we mentioned, Benedict Arnold was the guy who, at this point, was the commander in charge of the British military when they attack Richmond falls. And Lafayette tells James, I just want you to go to this camp that's right there in your backyard. Yeah. So he sends Lafayette into the camp of Richmond where Benedict Arnold is.
Correct, yeah. So he sends Lafayette, or rather Armistead, into the camp, and very quickly Armistead is able to gain a lot of trust from the British officers, and they end up including him in a lot of their war meetings. And during those meetings, he was able to take a lot of that information and then repatriate it back to the colonialists.
Now, when you say repatriated, that means he just got word back to Lafayette. Okay, I just clarifying based on, I'm sure that we knew exactly what you meant.
Sure.
But there might be.
I wasn't going to Google that word later.
No.
It's totally fine.
There might be somebody in the audience that was like, what does that mean? It's for their benefit, right? Got word back to Lafayette. Yeah. So Lafayette starts to get word. The Americans are finding out what the plans of the British are. And as they're getting the British plans, the Americans are able to respond. And in the midst of the Americans now being able to respond, this is January 1781. So we're toward the end of the Revolution already.
But Armistead also went to that camp with the perspective of, I'm a runaway slave, please help me, and was just coming at it like he needs their assistance. So I think that's important as well.
Oh, I mean, he definitely was playing the part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as a spy, he definitely is playing the part very well. I don't know that, he's going to fool Eric Swalwell like maybe some Chinese lady did. I don't know. I'm just
allegedly.
Alleged, right? Alleged.
Is it alleged?
No, it's confirmed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Right, it's been 3 to 6 months. Okay.
Nonetheless, yes. So he goes in strategically, knowing his situation. Well, in the midst of it all unfolding, Benedict Arnold gets assigned to go serve Cornwallis. James Armistead goes with Benedict Arnold into Cornwallis's camp. Now he's at the camp of the commander of all of the British forces, hearing information. The Americans are able to start responding in such a way that Cornwallis recognizes there's no way the Americans should have known where we were going and when we were going. There's no way unless
There's a spy in this camp.
Somebody in this camp is working with the Americans, and so this order goes out that we're going to find who it is. We're going to eliminate this person. James is in that scenario.
Yes. Could you imagine how scared he must have been?
What's incredible is when they call James into the room, they say, James, essentially, like, we know that there's a spy in this camp. Would you mind
We
being
trust
our
you."
spy
Yeah.
on the behalf of the British Army? And I could just imagine his excitement and realizing what he had
Everyone
achieved in
leave
that moment.
except for James. We need to talk to you.
Incredible.
Well, and how well you sold your part, right? That they're like, Cornwallis like, I don't trust any of my officers, but James, you're the one. Like, you sold your part really, really well. What certainly is worth noting now is he was the first double spy in American history,
Yes.
right? Which is just astounding. There's a couple really cool letters from Lafayette to George Washington. One letter in early 1781, Lafayette tells Washington that there's a new spy working for me, and I believe he's going to get us the best intelligence we've ever had. He seems to be the best spy we've ever had. There's a follow-up letter months later where he writes Washington and says, remember that spy I told you about was so good? He just got his information that Cornwallis is moving with troops. They're going to Yorktown. And Lafayette tells Washington, this might be the moment we've waited for, right? If we can surround him at Yorktown, we might can capture him. We might can end this war. Well, ultimately is what happens.
Yeah.
They surround Cornwallis. They end up winning the war. And today, like it would seem that every single history book, right? Anybody like 1619 Project, CRT, you want to talk about some of the black people overlooked, like this guy should be the
It
top.
didn't mention that the intelligence of a black man is what helped end the war and definitely saved millions of lives.
You would think that'd be
Skipped
included.
over it?
Seems like that was left out. But this is where, right? And by the way, so if you go to wallbuilders.com, if you want to get a story, we have a lot of stuff there. You actually can get the whole series of all 20 of these heroes we go through, and there's way more than 20 heroes. In fact, we will come out with many more series along the way. This is just the first installation of 20. In fact, join us back tomorrow. The rest of the next couple weeks through February, we're going to be going over one of these heroes a day. But James Armistead certainly is a guy who, unfortunately, is a little unheralded when the reality is, if you even follow his story, so we don't tell all of the details of his story in this page and a half, but as his story goes on, what's crazy is at the end of the Revolution, he decides he's going to apply for his freedom because the law at the time said, Virginia, if you fight for a year, then you could have your freedom, but you had to apply because you have to show your papers. I fought for a year.
Virginia had some crazy slavery laws.
Crazy laws. So he applies, and he's told that you don't make the cut because you weren't a soldier, right? You were only a spy.
Right, and by definition, there's not a whole lot of paper trail behind a spy.